And Kent House Plantation in Central Louisiana hosting their very first Black History Month tour later this month. February marks a special celebration of Black History Month at the Kent House. For the first time in Kent House Plantation history, they're giving a Black History tour by educating the community about the enslaved history of the plantation. This tour is not just about the history of the house, but delves into the lives of enslaved individuals who were an integral part of its history.
Rapides Parish was the largest slave-holding community in all of Louisiana. And up until now, our history books have never talked much about the enslaved people's experience. Kent House is now trying to flip the tables on this. For the first time in Western Louisiana,
the Kent House historian says, "We feel it's very important that everybody that comes out and hears this story will be fascinated about what the true history is."